Surprisingly, let's see here. Can you remember off the top of your head which NFL East team travels the most of the four?
Who travels the most?
Yeah, do you know? Are you look? Don't cheat.
No, it's not. It's either the Cowboys or it's the Giants. It's the Giants.
It is the Giants. They travel 20,614 miles, 22 time zones. But we're going to start with the Cowboys, who are second on this list in terms of NFC East travel at 19,566. 14 time zones, 8 fewer time zones. But the Cowboys. So last year, the Cowboys were pretty good until the very end, where Mike McCarthy is still trying to justify that third and forever sneak from Dak Prescott that cost them a chance to win that playoff game.
My God.
All right. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see on the screen, Debo has put up the schedule for the Dallas Cowboys. I've gone through the schedule. Also, Breech, first impressions. The start is incredibly difficult. Buccaneers, Cincinnati. What do you think this team ends up doing over the course of 17 games, 18 weeks? And just so we're on the same page here, Cowboys have added Dante Fowler from Atlanta. I mean, they had to replace Randy Gregory. I don't know if that's going to be a huge replacement, but that's a body. James Washington from the Steelers as a wide receiver. They lost Amari Cooper. La'el Collins went to some team in the AFC North. We mentioned Randy Gregory's gone to Denver. Cedric Wilson's signed with the Dolphins. Your guy, Greg Zuerlein, is now with the Jets. I didn't know that. And they've lost several other players on defense, and then they have also lost Blake Jarwin, the tight end. So this team, I don't know if they're better on paper than they were 4 months ago, but they're still the favorites in that division. So where you at on them?
Well, I mean, when I look at the Cowboys, they won the division by 3 games. So even if they're just stagnant and they didn't improve, they're not better, they're not worse than they were last year. They're just even. I feel like all the other teams in the NFC East got better, but did they make up a 3-game gap? Did the Eagles make up a 3-game gap? Did the Commanders make up a 5-game gap? It just doesn't feel like they did. And I think one reason the Cowboys were so good last year is because they went 6-0 in the division. You look at that 12-5 record, it's a little misleading because outside the NFC East, they only went 6-5. They were an average football team outside the NFC East. But look, Dak Prescott has been dominating the NFC East for so long that when I'm trying to decide, hey, are the Cowboys going to go over their over-under? How are they going to do in the division? Because for me, that's going to be the big part of whether or not they can hit this over 10.5. I think they go probably 5-1 in this division. They went 6-0 last year. That would be taking one step back. Maybe they lose one to the Eagles. But if they go 5-1, then guess what? They only have to go 6-5 to hit that over. And I see no reason why they can't do that with this schedule. I mean, it's pretty brutal to start with the Buccaneers and Bengals right out of the gate, but both those games are at home. We saw them almost beat the Buccaneers on the road in the NFL opener last year when Dak Prescott hadn't played an actual game in months because he was coming off that devastating injury, and they still almost pulled the upset. But then they get to play the NFC North. So you have consecutive games against the Lions and Bears in October. Those feel like very winnable games. In December, they have consecutive games against Houston and Jacksonville. Again, those feel like very winnable games. And so let's just say one of those teams upsets the Cowboys. You go 3-1 in those 4 games and 5-1 in the division, and you're pretty well set to be hitting that over. So just going through this Cowboys schedule, I think right now, and obviously things can change between now and September when the season starts, I have them going 11-6, which would make them hit the over under of 10.5, the over.
I like what you're saying, and I disagree.
Thing
is, I just went through all the schedules in the NFC East, and I had them going 5-1 in the division, which is what you just alluded to.
All right, so we're on the same page there. Let's see where it falls apart.
It falls apart in weeks 1 and 2.
Okay.
Those are losses to the Buccaneers and Bengals. They beat the Giants. They beat the Commanders. I have them losing at LA and then to the Rams and then at Philly. That's possible, right?
Yeah, that's their one division loss. So you don't see when I picked the division record, so I don't even have to pay attention to that on the schedule. Like I don't think about those games. If that makes sense.
I'm just going through the schedule. So yeah, I'll skip the division games. So Detroit, Chicago feel like wins. You have their bye. Then they lose back-to-back coming out of the bye to Green Bay and Minnesota on the road. They lose to the Colts at home. That game could go either way. So that's 10 wins if you want to give it to them. Texans win, then they win all the way. The only loss on the rest of the way out is at Tennessee on a Thursday night, 8:15 start, and that's 9 wins. So I gave them an extra win. If I gave them that Minnesota win in Week 11, that gets you to 10, and if they beat the Colts, that's 11, which is what you said. So those are 2 winnable games. And then the tough games, the Bucs, the Bengals, the Rams, outside of the division. If they find a way to win those games, that certainly also helps their cause. But my biggest concern, as always, is your boy Mike McCarthy and how he ends up coaching things up here. At all concerned by the 19,000 miles of travel, which compared to the Eagles and Commanders is 6,000 miles more than those 2 teams travel. Is that a lot or a little?
The middle of the road teams, because the Cowboys overall rank 13th in travel.
Okay.
And so the middle of the road teams I don't see it as a huge issue. I see it more of an issue for the bottom. The bottom teams get a huge advantage. The top teams, big disadvantage. But everyone that's traveling between 12 and 20,000 miles, it all feels the same, especially for the Cowboys, because you're located in the middle of the country. You don't really have any long flights. The reason your number is so high is because, you have to go 1,000 miles to play any game, but they're used to that. Their closest divisional game is Philadelphia or Washington, or whichever one of those games is geographically closer. So, this is a team that has to travel every year because they're in the NFC East when they're located not in the eastern portion of the country. So the Cowboys are one team I don't really that doesn't really factor into how I think they're going to play.
It is pretty remarkable as I look through this list, and I think I'm looking at a list that came out before you did your story, so the mileage might be off by a little bit, but I think yours probably isn't much different than what I'm reading here. The Dolphins travel the 4th most at 25,000 miles and change, and they're in the same division as the Bills, who travel 13,900 in terms of mileage, and they rank 23rd or so. That's a huge disadvantage if you're the Dolphins, because usually the division are pretty closely together. Like the Seahawks are up there, Denver's in the AFC West, obviously, but they're sort of a westish coast team. The 49ers are in there, the Cardinals, and the Rams are up there somewhere, aren't they? Where are the Rams?
No, the Rams are actually pretty low this year.
Oh, they're pretty low. What's going on?
They have 10 home games.
Oh, so that's also a benefit.
Well, they have the road game against the Chargers, which is in LA. So they have 10 games where they don't have to travel. So they don't have to travel for 7 games. So the Rams are this is the first time in years the Rams have been below 20,000, and they're at under 15,000.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I don't know how. Is there a situation where Seattle would not win this title every year? Because have they ever not won it since you've been doing it?
Well, I'm doing it right now, and the list you're looking at is incorrect. The Buccaneers have the most travel miles this year because that list came out before the schedule was released, so it didn't take into account
London
road. No, it took into account London and Germany. It did not take into account back-to-back road games.
So why does that change anything?
Well, for instance, you mentioned the Dolphins. The Dolphins in December in week 13 play at the 49ers and at the Chargers. They're not going to fly home after that trip to San Francisco. They're going to stay out west coast to California, fly down to LA and play that game against the Chargers.
Right.
So that shaves off a full 3,000 miles off the total that you're looking at.
Unless they go to Hawaii for the week to practice.
I mean, they could do that. And actually, that would be a great way to build team camaraderie. And then if they won that next game, everyone would do that. Their West Coast road trip would include a trip to Hawaii. But yeah, so that guy that tallied the miles before the schedule came out didn't obviously factor to that because he didn't know what the schedule was going to be. And so you had 6 teams that had these back-to-back road trips. The Seahawks were one of them. The Falcons will go to the West Coast for 2 weeks. There's several teams. The Patriots have a Sunday game and then a Saturday game. They play the Raiders on a Saturday and the Cardinals on a Sunday. And so they have a 6-day break. So they're obviously going to stay out there. So there's so you got to take all that into account when you're factoring. So that is how Tom Brady and the Buccaneers have the most travel miles this year. Fun fact, Wilson. There you go.
Breech in real time subtweeting the person who made this list.
I'm not
all right.
anyone. I'm subtweeting you for not reading my list.
You said it wasn't out yet.
I already linked to it. It's literally in Slack.
That's why I was confused when you said it. You hadn't done it yet.